Well, good morning and welcome to New Dawn. It is 6 a.m. in Nairobi, Kenya on this Friday, the 14th of June, 2024. My name is Michelle Ngele Odhiambo. Thank you for joining us this morning as we take you through the budget that was announced by Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u yesterday. This is President William Ruto's second budget for the financial year 2024-2025. And Kenyans continue to digest that budget. A look at the dailies this morning shows what Kenyans think about those budget, the budget breakdown for the next financial year. A look at the Standard newspaper's front page there shows budget's bitter pill. Now, the Treasury is walking a tightrope, juggling between raising revenue to fund insatiable government spending, as well as public outcry of increased taxes, while moving to cut borrowing from various sectors in an effort to narrow the budget deficit. Now, there's an array of numbers on the front page of the Standard newspaper, including the winners of the 3.9 trillion shilling budget. The winners include retirees, employers, public workers, but border riders, for example, who've been exempted, motorcycles have been exempted from excise duty, and green energy farms, especially solar and wind power projects, will be exempt from VAT. But we also have the losers. Telecommunication industry, for example, we have 10% of spectrum licenses will be eligible for 10% investment allowance. Then influencers will also have 20% fees, advertising fees charged through the internet and social media will be subject to 20% tax. Manufacturers, motorists are also crying as a result of those the budget statement there broken down by the Treasury CS. A look at the Daily Nation also shows the expectations and reactions of that budget. Says jobs freeze, tax squeeze. Now, the Treasury Cabinet Secretary yesterday announced a raft of sharp expenditure cuts, as well as a freeze on employment and new tax measures, in a budget that many say mirrored the International Monetary Fund's recent demands for deep public sector reforms, and assuring that the country starts living within its means in 3 years. Now, this is in line with that medium-term strategy that the Kenya Kwanza government signed. And so for the next 3 years, the government will be attempting to raise the tax-to-GDP ratio to about 20%, in what President Ruto says will help the country recover economically. We'd like to hear what you think about that budget statement yesterday by the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, as we take you inside the 3.9 trillion shilling budget in a lot more detail at the top of the hour. But first, some of the highlights of that budget. Now, President William Ruto's second budget for the financial year 2024 is set at 3.9 trillion Kenyan shillings, expected to help the economy grow 5.5%. According to Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u, the growth will only be realized through the payment of taxes, as the government is keen to avert borrowing while reducing associated risks. Here's Joel Chacha with that breakdown.
The Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u has today unveiled the 2024-2025 budget, which stands at 3.992 trillion Kenya shillings. He asserts that this budget will help the economy grow by 5.5%.
If we want to improve our country, if we want to defend that growth, if we want to improve the quality of life for Kenyans, it means we have to accept three things. We have to push the development that we want, and we have to finance that development, and we have to be accountable to that development. And that is what the budget is actually telling us.
Professor Ndung'u wants Kenyans to help finance President William Ruto's second budget through taxes with a set revenue target to hit a historic high of 2.8 trillion Kenya shillings, or else development will remain a distant dream without this revenue.
If we don't put in the policy measures, the programs, the projects, the interventions, then we will fail. All those require resources. Those resources have to come from taxes. There's nowhere else the resources will come from. So we have to persevere for us to get a better future.
The budget, however, has a fiscal deficit of 597 billion Kenya shillings.
Fiscal deficit for 2024-2025 will be financed by net external borrowing of 333.8 billion, equivalent to 1.8% of GDP, and net domestic borrowing of 263.2 billion, which is equivalent to 1.5% of GDP.
The Treasury says further highlighted the steps needed to reduce the debt burden and the risk that the nation faces.
The government will slow down uptake of new external commercial debt and undertake liability management operations through debt swaps and other innovative solutions. The government will also diversify sources of financing through issuance of Panda bond, Samurai bond, and Skook in diverse financial markets in China, Japan, and the Gulf regions respectively. The government will maximize use of concessional financing from bilateral and multilateral institutions to improve the debt sustainability and boost our credit rating.
The Ruto-led government has been urged to take bold steps to implement austerity measures to enable the achievement of a balanced budget.
Mr. Speaker, in order to move towards a balanced budget and further improve efficiency in public spending, the following bold actions and reforms have been outlined: foreign travels, rationalization of all training expenses across government, and restricting all training to within government institutions, rationalizing all allocations for purchases of motor vehicles, and suspending purchases of furniture for a period of 1 year, and suspending all refurbishment and partitioning of government offices.
Joel Chacha, K24 TV, Nairobi.
Meanwhile, the Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u asserts that the government will settle its pending bills totaling over 600 billion shillings by the end of October. This commitment remains firm despite the absence of an allocation for the same in the budget presented by the Cabinet Secretary in Parliament. Here's David Kagina with the details.
Last month, the pending bills verification team headed by former Auditor General Edward Ouko stated that government owes contractors and suppliers 110 billion shillings, refuting the initial figure of 641 billion shillings as indicated in the quarterly economic and budget review report by the National Treasury released last September. Nonetheless, Treasury CS Njuguna Ndung'u has expressed optimism that the government will succeed in clearing the bills before the year's end.
We've given ourselves to October and solve this problem once and for all. It means we are putting a trap, a line saying from 1st July 2024, we will not have any pending bills because we are now moving into accrual accounting.
Despite the absence of an allocation in today's budget statement, he maintains that the pending bills remain a priority for the government.
Why we are moving from June 2005 to October to October 2022 is because we want to close that chapter. But what we are really saying is that it will never happen again. We want to close it in finality.
The pending bills verification committee has received 94,997 claims totaling to 662.3 billion shillings. Analysis of these claims is ongoing and the committee is expected to finalize its work by October 2024 for implementation within the fiscal framework. Late last year, President William Ruto pledged to work towards clearing the 600 billion shillings debt.
It will be a happy ending, but it's a dirty history that we need to solve, isn't it? Your business should not sink because you had business with the government.
David Kagina, K24, Nairobi.
And the budget proposes a significant increase of 28 billion shillings for the education sector, totaling 656 billion shillings compared to the current fiscal year's allocation of 628 billion shillings. However, allocations for free education have seen a decline, as Harriet Chimea reports.
The cries of permanent and pensionable terms have finally been heard by the National Treasury. Today, Treasury CS Professor Njuguna Ndung'u proposed an allocation rise in the education sector by 28 billion. The allocation in the next financial year is 656.6 billion shillings compared to the current financial year, which was allocated 628.6 billion shillings.
From this end, I have proposed a total allocation of 656.6 billion, or 27.6% of total expenditures to the education sector.
46,000 intern JSS teachers will now breathe a sigh of relief as the allocation for their permanent and pensionable terms is 13.4 billion shillings. However, in the budget, free education has seen a decline in the allocation compared to the current financial year. The allocated proposed budget, as announced by Professor Ndungu, for free primary education is 9.1 billion shillings, while free day secondary school is set to receive 61.9 billion shillings.
I have proposed Kenya shillings 11.1 billion for the Kenya Primary Education Equity in Learning Program, Kenya shilling 1.8 billion for construction of integrated resource centers, and Kenya shillings 1.5 billion for the Kenya Secondary Education Quality Improvement Project. Mr. Speaker, other proposed allocations to the education sector include Kenya shillings 1.1 billion for the research, science and technology innovation.
In the 2023-2024 budget, allocation to free primary education was 12.5 billion shillings, while free day secondary education received 65.4 billion shillings.
Mr. Speaker, to support infrastructure and infrastructure development and ensure safe learning in our schools, I have proposed an allocation of Kenya shillings 3.2 billion for primary and secondary schools infrastructure, Kenya shillings 1 billion for construction of classroom for junior secondary schools, and Kenya shillings 2.3 billion for the construction and equipping of technical training institutes and vocational training centers.
Teachers Service Commission has been allocated 358.2 billion shillings. Higher education is set to receive 128 billion shillings, while TVET has been allocated 30.7 billion shillings. Basic education has been allocated 142.3 billion shillings.
Kenya shillings 1.3 billion for the training of teachers on competency-based curriculum, and Kenya shillings 360 million for the digital literacy program and ICT integration in our secondary schools.
Meanwhile, capitation for JSS has been increased to 30.7 billion shillings, up from 25.5 billion shillings. HELB has also received 35.9 billion shillings for loans for universities and TVETs, while 16.9 billion shillings has been allocated for scholarship for university students. TVET has been allocated 7.7 billion shillings towards capitation and scholarships. Harriet Chimea, K24.
Meanwhile, budgetary allocations to the health sector continue to take a downward trajectory in the 2 consecutive fiscal years, further raising questions on the government's plan for actualizing universal health coverage. The trends are worrisome to Kenyans as projects such as the Social Health Authority, pharmaceutical manufacturing, and achieving self-sustainability after donors end their support demand huge capital allocations to ultimately strengthen the health system. Here's our health reporter Ben Kirira with the details.
The 2024-2025 budget has suffered an 11 billion shilling reduction from the 2023-2024 138.8 billion shillings budget to the health sector. Despite this, the government maintains its optimism in operationalizing the Social Health Authority as a key financier of universal health coverage.
The Social Health Insurance Fund now will be important because it will afford all Kenyans a universal health care with more benefits. Reviewing the insurance schemes, especially looking at Edu, Afia, Indigence, Public Service, Police and Prison Commissions and independent offices.
Key government-funded components of the new authority are primary healthcare and emergency, chronic and critical illness. These two have been allocated 4.1 billion shillings and 2 billion shillings respectively. Universal health coverage has suffered a drastic reduction from 18.4 billion shillings to 4.2 billion shillings in the present and oncoming fiscal year. Free maternity services have also suffered a 2.1 billion shilling reduction, as well as medical cover for orphans, elderly and severely disabled persons. In regard to a key demand by doctors who held a 56-day nationwide strike, the government has shown loyalty in honoring its 2024 collective bargaining agreement with the doctors' union.
I have proposed Kenya shillings 3.7 billion for medical interns, Kenya shillings 406 million for training of health personnel, and Kenya shillings 8.6 billion for Kenya Medical Training Center.
Similar to last year, 4.6 billion shillings has been proposed to enhance vaccine and immunization program. Kenya has, however, in the recent past suffered childhood vaccines shortage, risking the immunity of over 1.6 million children. Even with this trend, the Health Cabinet Secretary Susan Nakhumicha and President William Ruto have maintained that they shall reform and improve the health system. Ben Kerera, K24, Nairobi.
The agriculture sector's budgetary allocations have been slashed compared to last fiscal year, raising concerns about food insecurity in the country. The move contradicts the government's plan to revive the economy through agriculture. The 2024-2025 budget proposes reducing the fertilizer subsidy from 16 billion to 10 billion shillings. Here's Mariam Jahid with the details.
The government's efforts to ensure food security in the country may be futile due to a significant reduction in the agricultural sector allocation by 33.7 billion shillings in the next financial year. In the financial year 2023-2024, the agricultural sector benefited greatly. However, the government's austerity measures in the next financial year could jeopardize efforts to increase food production due to a significant budget slash.
In order to revitalize and maximize benefits from our cash crops, the government will make further investments towards revival and enhancement of output.
The backbone of the economy is at risk as the fertilizer subsidy program, crucial for boosting food production, faces a 38.2% cut from the 16.2 billion shillings allocated in 2023-2024. However, coconut farmers will benefit from an allocation of 90 million shillings, while the blue economy priorities received an allotment of 2.4 billion shillings.
Over-reliance of the importation of edible oils and encourage local production and processing, I have proposed Kenya shillings 90 million for the coconut industry revitalization project, Kenya shillings 260 million for the National Edible Oils Crop Promotion Project, and an allocation to National Agricultural Value Chain Development Project, which includes support for cashew nut development.
The government has also shown its intent by allocating more funds for revitalizing pyrethrum, cotton and milk production sectors.
Kenya shillings 120 million for cotton industry revitalization project, and Kenya shillings 150 million for the pyrethrum industry recovery. 500 million for modernization of KCC milk factories, and Kenya shillings 250 million for the construction of a milk factory in Narok.
Coffee farmers will be paid their debts after the government allocates 2 billion shillings.
I have proposed Kenya shillings 2 billion for coffee cherry revolving fund. This is in addition to Kenya shillings 4 billion allocated in the current fiscal year. Kenya shillings 1.5 billion for payments of debts owed to sugarcane farmers, arrears to employees, and maintenance of cane testing units.
The CS has also said the allocations aim at transferring farmers from food deficit to surplus producers through input financing, subsidies and intensive agriculture extension services.
In order to revitalize and maximize benefits from our cash crops, the government will make further investments towards revival and enhancement of output.
Mariam Jahid, K24 Nairobi.
Now, the Treasury has allocated 67.4 billion shillings for affordable and social housing, as well as social physical infrastructure in the 2024 budget, while slashing transport and logistics budget by 39 billion shillings. As Bintura Komboka breaks down the budget allocations in the housing and transport sectors, Treasury has maintained that the affordable housing levy will continue to be deducted from Kenyans' payslips.
The Treasury has allocated 193.4 billion shillings for road infrastructure to support the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. While reading the 2024-2025 budget in Parliament today, Treasury Cabinet Secretary has proposed an allocation of 1 billion shillings for the Bus Rapid Transport project.
The government continues to expand and maintain critical infrastructure in roads, railways, sea, and airports to achieve socio-economic transformation that will also enhance Kenya's competitiveness and facilitate cross-border trade and regional integration.
Focusing on upgrading rural access routes, improving urban informal settlement roads, and enhancing critical national and regional trunk roads, the Treasury has allocated 86.2 billion shillings for the construction of roads and bridges, 37.7 billion shillings for maintenance, and 69.5 billion shillings for the rehabilitation of roads. To spur economic growth projected at 5.5%, the government will improve rail transport and construct ports at a proposed cost of 29.6 billion shillings. This will expand railway transport and associated infrastructure. Additionally, 12.1 billion shillings has been allocated for air transport, 3.1 billion shillings for marine transport, and 4.2 billion shillings for road safety in the 2024-2025 fiscal year.
To facilitate movement of goods and people in our inland waters, I have proposed an additional Kenya shillings 200 million for acquisition of ferries for Lake Victoria.
The government will also scale up broadband connectivity and fully implement the last-mile electricity connectivity program to improve the business environment. And for this, the government has allocated 16.3 billion shillings for the 2024-2025 financial year, including 5.2 billion shillings for Konza Data Center and Smart City facilities, 2.3 billion shillings for construction of KAST at Konza Technopolis, 2.8 billion shillings for Kenya Digital Economy Acceleration Project, and 2.8 billion shillings for Last Mile County Connectivity Network, with 1.8 billion shillings allocated for digital superhighway and government shared services. In facilitating delivery of 200,000 houses per annum and enabling low-cost housing mortgages, the government has allocated 92.1 billion shillings in the 2024-2025 financial year budget for the housing program. This includes 67.4 billion shillings for affordable and social housing and social physical infrastructure, 11.3 billion shillings for Kenya Informal Settlement Improvement Project Phase 2, 1.1 billion shillings for construction of markets, 1 billion shillings for construction of housing units for National Police and Kenya prisons, 876 million shillings for maintenance of government pool houses, and 444 million shillings for construction of county headquarters. Bentura Kwamboka, K24, Nairobi.
A senior police officer identified as Samson Kipchirchir Kipruto of Londiani Police Station in Kericho County has been shot and killed after he shot and wounded a magistrate at the Makadara Law Courts in Nairobi. The Makadara Principal Magistrate, Monica Kivuti, was shot in the court soon after she delivered a ruling in a case involving the wife of the officer. Here's Majibu Kitsao with the details.
Principal Magistrate Monica Kivuti of Makadara Locals was today shot and injured after delivering a ruling in a case involving the wife of a police officer identified as Samson Kipchirchir Kipruto of Londiani Police Station in Kericho County. The officer's wife, Jennifer Wairimu, is accused of obtaining money by false pretense amounting to 2.9 million Kenya shillings. She had pleaded to be released on cash bail, which the court didn't grant. The ruling did not sit well with the officer, who decided to do the unthinkable. Following the unexpected shooting, the assailant was fatally shot by another officer, killing him on the spot.
We had an incident that somehow one of our magistrates was injured, and a few of our officers were the orderlies of the same courts. There had been a case which is ongoing, and the ruling was determined today. And during the time of that ruling or judgment given, a situation erupted up in court number 9, whereby one suspect entered to the courts and injured the magistrate in that particular court and the orderlies. But lucky enough, our officers who are within the courts were able to act swiftly, and we managed to neutralize the situation. And now we can say that our magistrates and the officers are stable.
3 other officers were injured in the incident and a Jericho pistol recovered at the scene. The body of the deceased officer has since been moved to City Mortuary awaiting autopsy.
The suspect here we are yet to establish because currently the officers from homicide are managing that. So we are going to give full information when the situation is well managed. But as at now, the situation has been neutralized accordingly.
The Office of the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary in its statement has condemned the incident, promising to enhance security protocols for civilians visiting court premises and security officers visiting courts in circumstances that do not require them to be armed. Majibu Kitsao for K24 TV, Nairobi.
That report by Majibu Kitsao brings us to a break on New Dawn. When we come back, a look at us making headlines on the dailies on this Friday, the 14th of June. We'd like to hear your thoughts on that analysis as well. The hashtag is New Dawn. Speak to us on X at K24 TV. Do stay with us.